Hello, BookTube. I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel and the channel of Dan of the Weird Book Club. We are having a discussion about this novella from France, The Collection by Nina Legere, translated from the French by Laura Francis, published in English last year, I believe, by Granta, originally published in France in 2017. This is a very strange novella. It's about a presumably straight young woman. Do we know that she's in France? I don't know if we know that. I don't even know if we know her race. But she collects penises. Thankfully not involving any kind of amputation, just she likes to have completely anonymous or hyper-casual sex with men in hotel rooms, and then she makes a neural snapshot of their penis and puts it in her memory palace. And that is what happens in this novel. I have to tell you from the outset, and Dan, I need you to rescue this video, because if it's just me, there ain't a lot going to be happening in this discussion. I thought this was really stupid and incredibly boring. The writing/translation is really good, but this is a book about penises. I can't think of anything that I love more in the world than penises, and this is so boring. I didn't expect it to be pornographic. I didn't expect it to be erotic from start to finish, but I didn't expect to keep falling asleep while I was reading it. Legere has an essayistic tone to her prose that is just mind-numbing to me. I don't care about anything happening here. God, Dan, I don't know if I have much else to say. So, much is made in the narrative about the fact that what she's doing has no connection to a larger self, and that she's not interested in the selves of these other men. I was kind of interested, in theory, in the fact that she is sexualizing men and compartmentalizing her reaction to their naughty bits the way that men have always done to women. But that didn't go anywhere interesting. That's so far in the first half of the book. I should say, people, this is the discussion of the first half of the book, and we will have a part two if I can stay awake that long. We are told why she does it in hotel rooms. That wasn't very interesting. This whole memory album was just like stuff and nonsense. I have to say, modern French fiction has never interested me because it's like this. There's no people in it. There's no story. And it's mind-numbingly philosophical. Is this philosophy, Dan? What am I missing? Dan, you have to rescue this video series. She's standing at the window. We rarely get any details about the men or the encounters, other than that they occur in a series of very neutral hotel room settings. But there's one guy on page 56 they're looking out the window and looking at the constellations, and he's going on and on about what that constellation is and what this constellation is. And the narrator says, his voice trembles as he steals calculated glances towards the bed, without understanding that, despite its stellar character, the charm of his litany is equivalent to that of a recitation of multiplication tables. And I wrote in the bottom margin, alas, I'm starting to feel the same way about this book. It is not charming the pants off me. I hope it's doing a better job with Dan. And Dan, show us. Tell us all about it. That's all I got. This is really, really deeply uninteresting to me. But I won't bail, Dan. Or will I?
Oh, hi weirdos. Dan Rossbach here, your co-lead discussant at the Weird Book Club. Special thanks to Shawn for taking the lead on our discussion of The Collection by Nina Legere, what we both come to refer to affectionately as the penis book. Now, following up on Shawn's comments about Legere's prose style putting him to sleep, I would note that usually when a penis puts me to sleep, that's usually a sign of a job well done. But all in all, Shawn, I really have to agree with your negative assessment of the novel so far. You mentioned that our narrator, Jean, with her constant, compulsive quest to acquire more and more anonymous sexual encounters in order to continue expanding her penis memory palace, this quest really reveals nothing about the person undertaking it. And to me, it seems somewhat clear that this is an intentional move by Leger, as the narrator is constantly mentioning their refusal to disclose anything else about Jean's life, the socio-economic conditions that allow her to be cruising for new dick 24/7, any sort of psychological or social elements that might be driving this process forward, possibly even allowing her to derive some enjoyment out of it. Like, for me, it doesn't really seem at all shocking that someone would want to have sexual encounters that are relatively free of personal attachment or any really form of self-disclosure. But being presented with this intentional gap in our knowledge about the protagonist, I think the most natural place for the mind to start wandering is to question what exactly she's getting out of it. Like, don't get me wrong, building a penis-based memory palace does sound like a noble endeavor of sorts. There can be something rather fascinating, almost hypnotic about novels that cycle through the same procedure again and again, revealing maybe nuanced distinctions between each iteration. And I will admit, the initial description of her constructing this elaborate mnemonic edifice did strike me as kind of humorous and fascinating at first. The narrator says on page 7, she is constructing a memory palace that, as it fills with new penises, becomes intricate with corridors, annexes, and outbuildings. The number of doors is always growing. She could have taken photos and made a collection from them. She could have kept a notebook of tallies or sketches, used a spreadsheet or private diary as a backup. She could have confessed her memories, more or less retouched, to others. She could have forgotten them. She preferred to construct a palace. Each room of the edifice accommodates the memory of a particular penis and ensures its remembrance. Jean only has to cross the threshold and she rediscovers the shape, the form, the particular warmth, the density, the smell of the penis, the elasticity of the tissue, and its color when drawn tight and when slackened, the smooth or glistening appearance of the head, the network of bluish blood vessels, the shaded areas, the wrinkled fingerprint skin of the testicles, the growth pattern of the hairs. And it was at this point that I actually did kind of start to get my hopes up, thinking that maybe Leger would be interested in pursuing like this extremely detailed, almost abstract analysis of the penis. It's kind of interesting to think about it as this part of the male body that grows and transforms and distends and takes on new shapes throughout the process of intimacy. But that's not really what we're presented with in the rest of the novel so far. Like, a lot of the little vignettes that have been presented seem more interested in shining a spotlight on other people's reactions to Jean's sexuality, like the sexual partners that are maybe expecting something a little bit more from the encounter than Jean is willing to offer, or we hear about how at first she had shared some of the details of her erotic adventures with her immediate social circle, who immediately try to psychoanalyze her and pathologize her and present her with what they believe to be the best solution for this strange, repetitive path her life has taken. And I don't know, maybe do you think Leger thought that this would make the mystery woman at the center of the novel appear all the more tantalizing because she's so resistant to analysis and interpretation? But I don't know, I'm not experiencing anything like an allure to try to get to better understand the person at the core of the novel. Like, if that's what you want to do, go for it. Fuck what everyone else says. Clearly their judgments are not overly impacting your decision making when it comes to your own sexuality. And then, like, also I feel like we're supposed to view Jean as some sort of like sexual rebel, because the narrator, who is explicitly not Jean, and I'm wondering if you have any idea or prediction about who it actually is supposed to be. The narrator is constantly pointing out how everyone else is so uptight about sex. One of the many possible origin stories presented to us for Jean's fixation on penises is that she's caught staring at some stranger's bulge on the subway for like 15 straight minutes. And the man being with his significant other is imagined to then become embroiled in this great argument about why he was allowing this attention to be cast upon his precious cock without intervening for propriety's sake. And then we see Jean observing this group of presumably middle-aged tourists in Paris. I believe we're supposed to be in Paris, given the names of the various hotels that are presented, where Jean likes to schedule her rendezvous. And Jean's watching these old fuddy-duddies try to cover up their actual erotic interest in visiting a sex shop by treating it all as, one big joke, not actually purchasing anything that would enhance their own sexual pleasure, but instead showing off to everyone how they only got gag gifts for other people in their lives, presumably. And it's like, oh man, society's so square, society's so uncomfortable about sexuality. Not like our friend Jean, the penis queen. But I don't know, I kind of had to meet all of this fictional outrage with a bemused, slutty shrug. Since I, as a reader, am not experiencing any degree of this sense of shock or righteous indignation. So if you want to talk about things that will always, without fail, bore me to tears, definitely overly concerning yourself with what the general reactionary population will think about non-conforming sexualities would be pretty near the top of the list. But I don't know. Maybe I'm making too much of this. What do you think, Shawn? Do you feel like we as the reader are supposed to be shocked by this as well? Am I? Are we simply too slutty to read this novel in its intended fashion? The only other observation I would make, because I really think it can and has been employed as an interesting device in other novels, is this strange way in which like an excess of disclosure of what are generally considered to be very personal details can actually serve to completely obscure the psychological, social, biological entity that's supposed to be at the center of the novel. Like, because we're presented with these long, detailed passages about how Jean goes about finding all of her random hookups, the specific settings in which she prefers to have her sexual encounters, and of course the occasional, extremely detailed description of the particular penises which she has known. These almost feel like they're serving to distract us from what I think in most cases would be the most obvious and logical questions. Like, again, what exactly is she getting out of this? Her sexual pleasure is never directly or even indirectly referenced. It wasn't even clear to me if she was just simply giving these guys a blowjob, or is she having full-on, penetrative sex with them? Does she have an orgasm? Does she try to make these guys come? Is that part of it? Kind of strains credibility in this strange way where you have to start questioning if her own sexual satisfaction really doesn't play any role in what is gratifying to her about these encounters. Why couldn't she just look up random dick pics online? I mean, clearly this is set in a sort of modern contemporary era. Could she have pursued a degree as a urologist? So, I don't know. So far, it just feels like we're being presented with this mystery that isn't actually all that compelling. I'm trying to think of some kind of leading questions I could ask to enrich our reading experience moving forward, but honestly, I feel like we haven't been presented with enough substantial material to even have a theory at this point of what is going to be the most significant or interesting things to look out for. So I guess what I'm kind of thinking I might talk about in the next phase of our discussion would be, do you think the book actually successfully delivered some form of theme or content? Did it ultimately deliver on or subvert your expectations in any interesting ways? How has your penis appreciation been affected by the reading experience? That really is all I can think to say to you, Shawn, and to all the weirdos watching out there. So, until the conclusion of this discussion, happy reading, weirdos.